being a sports agent in 2026 is much different than it was in 1990. But our guest, Brian Levy, has been doing this since then. From 1990 until now, he has been representing coaches and players through the NFL, college, and now even in high school. And it has evolved. I mean, with NIL, transfer portals, and everything in between. Now you have to deal with the high school kids getting ready to get paid into college. The parents have to be educated. We get to talk to him about what he's doing to help those parents, what he's doing to help those athletes, what are they doing to prepare financially for what they're about to see, the honest feedback. He also talks about, and you're going to hear this is a very consistent theme, is relationships. See, what I respect about Brian is the fact that he values relationships and loyalty. And let me tell you right now, the reason I was even able to get Brian on my podcast was because of a friendship that I developed at the last place that I worked at. And I made a friend with a guy named Jason Hess. I want to shout him out right now. Jason was such a good, genuine dude. I never knew him before. I met him there. And although we only worked a few short months together, he's the one who ultimately connected me to Mitch. And then Mitch connected me with our guest, Brian. And those are the relationships and the friendships that I value. I think that's awesome that Jason was willing to reach out and connect me with Mitch, and that Mitch, having just met me, connected me with his mentor, Brian Levy. So that's how this worked out. I value relationships, and that's why I respect our guest, Brian. And I hope you guys really enjoy this interview here on the Gametime Guru. So,
what time is it?
Game time! Woo!
This is the Gametime Guru podcast, where I interview sports figures from all over the world to help deliver a panoramic view on sports. So whether you're a former athlete, one of the crazies, or simply a casual sports fan, this is the perfect show for you as we peel back the curtains and learn from our guests every single week. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and I'm helping you see sports through a different lens.
what's going on, everybody? Welcome out to another episode of the Gametime Guru podcast. Shane Larson here, host of the show. Now, we've almost been 10 years running into the podcast. Super grateful for everyone who's tuned in along the way. Whether this is your first time listening, welcome aboard. If you're a long time listener who's been there from the beginning, awesome. We appreciate all of you. So just quick housekeeping items. If you guys are new to the podcast, whichever podcast platform that you're listening on, if it's YouTube, if it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just hit the subscribe button. That's all I ask you to do. We're trying to build our YouTube channel over there to get the video content popping, but we've got listeners from 183 countries, all 50 states. You guys know who you are. We appreciate all of you for tuning in. I just ask that you guys hit that subscribe button and keep following the show. So as you guys heard in the introduction, super awesome opportunity today for us to pick the brain of a guy who's been in this industry for years and years and years and has been around the evolution of the industry, so to speak. There's a lot of changes that have happened in the sports world, and he is the CEO, founder of Goal Line Football. The guy is just there's so many titles for him, but his name is Brian Levy, and we're excited to have you on here, Brian. Thanks so much for joining the show.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely, Brian. So real quick, I want to, before we even get into being a sports agent and someone who's representing, coaches and players and so forth, I kind of want to pick your brain and just go go rewind the clock, so to speak, Brian. Get to know you a little bit in your sports background. Did you grow up competing and stuff in athletics? Like, when did you get into the sports world and realize that that's kind of a field you wanted to go into in your career?
I was always competitive. I mean, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and we had a lot of kids in the neighborhood and a lot of street ball and stickball and roller hockey and basketball and anything we could get our hands on. So everything was a competition. And I always remember, like, the last thing you don't want to happen to you is you don't want to be picked last in a game, whether it be basketball or stickball or any kind of competitive game. You don't want to be standing there when they're picking up the teams and you're last. So you always got to work really hard and be competitive to be that guy.
No, I love that. So, I was listening to a podcast that you actually had sent me over, and I was taking notes on that. It was actually a really cool thing. So just learning your story a little bit too. You've been representing players since 1990, right? But your journey
Correct.
into the business was it wasn't like some master plan. I guess before Goal Line Football, let's talk about this. Like, how did there's a sneaker store type of encounter that I heard in that story, and I read it in a blog. Can you talk to us about what was going on in the sneaker store?
Yeah, so I had begun in the late 80s to dabble in the basketball arena. That was my sport. One of my best friends in college went on to play in the NBA, and he played for the Bulls with Michael Jordan. And I was intrigued, and I actually even did an internship with the NBA over the summer. I worked the NBA draft that year. It was actually the Elijah Bowie, Jordan, Barkley, Perkins first 5 picks draft, which was really
Wow.
exciting, except for Portland, I guess. Um, but I was just in love with basketball. I played it, and passionate about it. And a family friend had a guy by the name of Anthony Mason who played for the Knicks. So at that point, he was playing for the Nets, and he was kind of like back and forth. He didn't make the Nets. He was going to Mexico, and I was dealing with Anthony. But in those days, you also had to get sneakers for your guys or whatever they needed whenever they needed it. And I was at a sneaker store in Long Island, and I know the owner since I'm probably 5 or 6 years old, Jerry Candell. May you rest in peace. Great guy, great sports guy. And Jerry said to me, "Hey, there's a guy here in the store up front. He says he plays for the New York Jets." And I asked him, he said he didn't have an agent right now. And I said, "Well, that's, sorry for him, but I'm not a football agent." And he looks at me, goes, "Schmuck, you are now." And then that relationship was with Brad Baxter, who was, in those days, I think it was, I think there were 12 rounds in the draft or whatever. He was a late round pick of the Jets, and the Vikings didn't make the team. And now he was on the Jets practice squad. At that point, they were just starting. So we signed him, and Brad actually, due to attrition that year, became a starter. I think it was like Blair Thomas and Freeman McNeil and Johnny Hector. All these guys got hurt, and Brad ends up starting and becomes a key part of their team.
Wow.
And then through Brad, I met other guys. So Brad, we used to go to Friday nights. I used to take Brad to Peter Luger's, and um, you know, he started introducing me to his guys, and they started coming to Peter Luger's. And within probably 5 years, 6 years, I started having some draft picks go there. I had like 9 to 11 guys active, inactive on the Jets, just from them seeing me interacting with my clients, not from me recruiting them, which was really good.
Wow. Well, that kind of like that from when I had the conversation with you on the phone just a few weeks back and talking to you, like all these things, and then just watching the podcast that you had sent over and reading some blogs and learning, relationships are big for you. It sounds like, relationships are a big thing. And so that obviously shows it's contagious when you have authentic relationships. And I actually like love that component of it. And I kind of want to pick your brain on that. So that's really cool how it all transpired. Everything kind of just worked itself out naturally. And then people started seeing that. But I want to talk about relationships because the reason I'm even able to like connect with you, Brian, was through a friend of mine that I worked with who happened to know Mitch, and Mitch knew you, and like just have an authentic. I'm a big proponent in having authentic relationships, whether you're at work or whatever. Like you don't need to fake it. Like you're with these people. If you are a genuine person, you just get to know them as people, and like good things can come about from it. I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to talk to you about like stuff here because it was from a relationship that I have, a friendship. And so, talk to me about relationships in your profession and treating these athletes and coaches that you represent more than just like a number, so to speak.
I think everything starts with the relationship. I don't think you can work together in a business sense unless you have a good personal relationships. Relationships are based on trust. I mean, that's the foundation of any good relationship. Honesty, and you know, being sometimes blatantly honest, but just being real with people. I think that so often in the sports world, these athletes and coaches and whomever, even now you're seeing high school athletes and college athletes, they're being fed what they want to hear and not what they need to hear. And I think that for me, I'm not built like that. So interestingly enough, a lot of our clients come to us not, we don't actively recruit. We get referrals, and we also, they get to see us working. And when they see us working, they're like, "Wow, that's really interesting. Your guy loves you. I mean, he speaks very highly of you. He trusts you. He says you changed his life. You've been there for him since he was nothing." And I think that's the key. I think you have to be real, but real isn't just like for the show. Real is like who you are. And if you change who you are to behave a certain way when you're around your clients, or you behave a certain way when you're recruiting people, that's not who you are. It's not a sincere presentation of yourself. And I think that for me, and what I always believed in, is what you see is what you get.
Sure.
It's what I learned as a young kid. I learned that you're unique in who you are. And if people are interested in that, great. And if they're not, good luck to them. I'm not interested in having fake relationships based on fake promises and fake foundations.
For sure. For sure. And I respect that. I think that's awesome. Well, it obviously is something that other people, the athletes and the coaches and so forth, they respect it as well, because it's proving that because they're coming to you, right? There, it's not like you're actively recruiting, like you said. And I had a question that I wanted to kind of pick your brain here. Just like if I'm a listener to this podcast, I want to know, I'm like, oh, okay, so Shane's talking to a sports agent right now. And you mentioned like NBA, then you mentioned the NFL. And we'll get into the concept of like now even high school and college athletes. This is a whole new world we're in, but just different sports and the intricacies in between each one of them. You got coaches, you got players, the intricacies in the contracts and like how you have to handle certain things. Is it difficult as a sports agent to have to like, are there a lot of differences from what you do with the NBA people as to what you do with the NFL versus the college like athletes with their contracts and so forth? How difficult is it to manage it and stay up to date with all the things that are going on for each one of those components?
Well, it's a constant changing, especially, for me, I don't do NBA anymore, but
Sure.
it was all standardized language, for player contracts in the NFL. A lot of the language is standard. You're negotiating terms, you're negotiating incentives, you're negotiating bonuses. There are other things that you're trying to get in there. Um, I think the most complicated things that we're dealing with right now are at the collegiate level. Coaching contracts. Every school has it written a different way. Just the
Mhm.
way their seasons are and the way that the recruiting part of the season is, and they're trying to extend their contracts now through March or April, but which make no sense because if your season ends in November, December, or January, depending upon your bowl eligibility, you're trying to lock these guys in and penalize them and with buyouts for leaving early. And the same goes for the player stuff now. So there's been a multitude of deals with the ever-changing landscape of high school to college and the transfer portal. And I think that, they went from now they have the third party deals and you have the school scholarship agreement. Um, I think that you better stay on top of it. And what I like to do is formulate language before a negotiation. So you say, listen, here are some things from our side of the table that are non-negotiable. As we get into this, here's the language we want to protect our client in these situations so that we don't have to go uh, last minute into, oh my God, we have a problem. I want to solve the problem before we get to it. So the issues now are, and if you're following what's going on with the portal and eligibility and all this, it's changing every day. There's been challenges. Courts are getting involved in rulings on the NCAA. So I think that if you don't know what is coming up or you don't know what's current, you can really hurt your clients. And again, it's extremely complicated. And I think that the problem with, especially on the high school and the college level, is you have untrained runners, family members, coaches, advisors doing deals that they have no idea what they're doing. They literally have no idea, and they're hurting their clients, if you will.
Yeah, I would imagine like what as I was thinking about this leading up to this interview, Brian, I was putting myself in your shoes, which I'm glad I'm not in. That would be a lot of pressure. I mean, you're built for it. Obviously, you do a great job at what you do, but man, you got to be on top of it, and especially now, man. I mean, even doing this podcast in the last 3 or 4 years, Brian, it's crazy the changes that have been made in NIL. First, it was the Wild Wild West. Now they've got all these collectives jumping up out of nowhere from every school, paying this and that. Now they've got a little bit more reign on it with the universities. Now we've got, I guess, revenue sharing caps, as so to
Right,
speak,
Cap.
is what they're trying.
Yep.
Yeah, they're trying to like kind of cap it to a certain degree. And then there's even like little things there. So I'm like, oh my gosh, dude. Just like from what I know, the limited knowledge that I have, I'm like, that's so hard. Um, so I guess my question is, when you've got these athletes that are coming out of high school into the college realm, and they're trying to make sure that like they're signing with a school, what are the things like that you're, I guess, alerting these athletes of like, hey, this is awesome. You could probably make X amount of dollars doing this. You have a brand that's like this third party deal that wants to do this, but like, are these kids up to speed with how taxes work? Like, what are these kids needing the most when it comes to this like new world that they're in right now?
I think they just need people who are going to be real with them and honest. I think one of the things that we try to do with the high school kids is we ask them to take their official visits, all of them, without committing, and then without knowing what the the compensation is going to be, tell us what school they like the most and why.
Ooh,
So we prefer in-class learning versus online learning. We prefer, schools that have a major that they're interested in that after football, because the other part of it is such a minuscule percent of these high school kids going to college are ever going to play in the NFL. So
right.
they're now with the new 5-year rule, they have 5 years to make really good money, but they got to put that money away. They got to invest it and they got to prepare for taxes. They got to set up LLCs so they could protect themselves. So there's ways that we help them. What I will say is sometimes they're not interested in the help once they get the money. And I think that they have a lot of responsibilities with family and other people around them that, all of a sudden the money goes poof. The good news is if they're good enough over 5 years, they can make a really decent amount of money while they're getting a free education and a master's at that point, which should take them very far in life. But they have to pay attention to that too.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things I think if you're a high school athlete right now and you're like considering this whole new world that you're jumping into, I'd highly encourage you guys, pay attention to what Brian's doing. Even after this interview, kind of follow what they're doing, what businesses like the services he provides, because this is the stuff I am so passionate about. I remember watching an interview with Cam Newton. Cam Newton had said that like when he got into the NFL, he got a signing bonus, massive check, millions and millions of dollars. He didn't even know how to cash a check, right? At that time, he didn't know how to deposit a check because technically at that time they weren't supposed. If you had a scholarship, you couldn't even earn money because you had to be full time at your school. And they had talked about like how many football players didn't even know how to they didn't have a bank account because their whole life was dedicated to football, and that's all they did all the time. So they never
Right.
worked. And so I can't even imagine being a young kid at the age of 18 to 21 years of age and coming in with even just six figures out of nowhere, let alone maybe you're getting $1 million plus. That's a lot of money to be pulling in. And so just the simple things of bank accounts, LLCs, like you were talking about, just the ways that you can do this and just being prepared for what's coming out of that check with the taxes. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. People don't realize that. I mean, you got about 30 to 40% off the top of that one. So those are just the things that I think about. And I hope the kids, I don't know, maybe you're seeing it. I don't know. Has it been long enough for us to see the after effects of this? Have you seen it with any of your clients and people that that like they've gone through the whole college realm, they're done playing ball, they never went to the pros, and now they're into the real world? Has it been long enough for us to get some sample sizes there to see what's going on, the after effects of it?
We're not there yet. We're not there
Okay.
yet. But there are some scary signs that I see.
Okay.
And I had to tell one young man, listen, if you want to give your mom money, I understand that, but let her get a salary from the LLC. Let her take in money from somewhere else. Just giving her the money is not going to help you from a tax standpoint. But
Interesting.
again, the financial side of it, much like the agent side, there's financial managers on top of these kids and with an agenda and whatever. And they hopefully we can match the right kids with the right financial people. A lot of times they have someone already that they know, but we prefer NFLPA certified financial advisors because we know, much like us in a negotiating contract, NFLPA certified agents, player agents, that we know what we're doing, and there's a lot less risk using us than your 7-on-7 coach to do the deal.
Oh, for sure. Great point.
And
I
it
love that.
happens.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's crazy to hear too. I'm sure it happens more than we would like to imagine. Probably that's crazy. But I
Yep.
can. So to that point, Brian, I guess I'll kind of piggyback off of that. I think what happens with parents, the reason they probably do that is because they just don't know, and then they're also new to this world, right? You got these parents that are like maybe they weren't athletes themselves, or maybe they were, but they don't even have a clue. How, like their kids probably have more of an idea of what's going on than them, and so they probably want what's best for their kids, but they don't know how to navigate it. I guess, how do you help the parents as well as these high school athletes that are going into the collegiate realm?
One of the things that we're doing is, we provide, especially when they go on the visits, the official visits of parents, we provide them with a list of questions that they should be asking.
Cool.
Things and ask them what they want to know also from that process if there's something that we've left out. Post that, these kids wait, obviously they play through their senior year now, and wait through that. We're going to have parents from the previous class do a Zoom. We're going to be doing a Zoom with our families from past years with the new prayer, telling them what the pitfalls are, what the things that they have to look out for. And then get, someone on there in the financial world, an accountant and, money manager on that call as well to explain to them what's about to happen. And, then have the kids on as well to hear that. I think it's a lot for these young kids to process. I mean, I remember coming out of college, even coming out of high school, going to college. I mean, I would never have been able to grasp what's going on with these kids and how much money they're getting to, when they're 17 years old, they're getting promised hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they just think that's a never ending flow. The numbers aren't divisible over many years. So if you're not playing in the NFL, you better have a plan to use your education to get a good job and to do whatever you want to do. And I think that that's where everything falls short. And you hate to see it. I see it with a lot of my NFL players. The average career is like around 3 years, I guess. Sometimes some people say it's a little less, a little more. But guys who played 3 years, are broke in 3 years. I mean, they don't have any money left after they've finished playing. And then they're looking for programs and, what happens next. And I think the most important thing is to get out in front of what happens next. I think you have to have much like you plan to go to college and plan to play college football and you dream to play in the NFL. I think you also have to have a plan for what happens if the NFL doesn't work. What happens if you don't get drafted? You've made a lot of money over the 5 years. Hopefully you've saved it. And hopefully you have your master's, at best, at worst, a degree from a good school. And what are you going to do with it? What major? What was your major? Is it a bullshit major? Is it something that, you can live off of? So those are important things.
Oh, for sure. No, that's awesome. Now, this is a question that kind of goes into this a little bit too, is preparing. First off, I want to say that's awesome what you were doing for the parents. Having parents from the previous classes talk like that, I took note of that. That is awesome. I think the more that we can just educate with real life experiences and prepare these parents is going to be huge for these high school athletes as it continues to move forward. It just helps bring a little bit of peace of mind, and they can connect them with people like yourself. Like, people just need to know what resources are out there and have trusting ones, like trustworthy ones. But I've coached the high school age kids for basketball, Brian, and some of them go on to junior colleges. Some of them go on to more like to go play ball. One of the things they've been all talking about is building this brand, build a brand, use your personal brand. Even in JUCO, you can try to build off your brand and get some local deals with the dealerships in the local towns and so forth. What are your thoughts on this for these high school? What's the advice you would have in your realm of like building a brand? What should they be aware of? And is it really as important as they think it's going to be, or what they're being told that it is?
I think to be honest, it's hype. I think that's what it
Okay.
is. People are hyping these kids and telling them you gotta have a brand, you gotta have a brand. If every single player has a brand, what's going to stand out about their brand? Their brand is who they are. Their brand is the effort they put on the field. The brand is their film. Their brand is their ability to win, their ability to play at a high level consistently. That's what your brand is. It's interesting because I'm a huge Knicks fan, and I just watched for the first time since 1973 the Knicks win a championship. And you know what? There's no brand there. Jalen Brunson doesn't have a brand. Bridges doesn't have a brand. Hart doesn't have a brand. OG doesn't have a brand. Cat doesn't have a brand. They don't have a brand. You know what they're defined by? Their success, the fact that they won, and they won as a team, and they sacrificed for each other, and they played hard every single game, winning or losing. They played till the final buzzer. That's a brand. This other stuff is your initials on a hat. I mean, where are you selling that? In your family, to your school? I just think that these kids need to concentrate on building success, building winning, building intensity. That's a brand. You think that the Jordan brand came before Jordan? You think that the Kobe, the whole Kobe Bryant thing, the Mamba mentality came before he made it to the NBA? Both of them are just iconic because of what they did on the court. That's
Absolutely,
it.
man.
That's the
Absolutely.
brand.
I love that. That's one that I would encourage. If you're listening to this one, hit the rewind button and listen again on that specific point. That's actually a great piece of advice and some insight from your experience. Coach, or sorry, not coach. I wanted to ask you about coaches. Sorry, I had coaching in my mind. So Brian, when working with coaches, especially in the NFL, I have a question on that one too. Like, just talking about NFL organizations, like getting their hiring's wrong. There's a lot of turnover. And for you representing clients, like, have you had to deal with that yourself, of like the turnover consistently with different teams and having to deal with any tough situations that way, with coaches getting let go or having to renegotiate contracts and so forth?
Yeah, I mean that seems to be the new annual deal that we're up against. I think that the coaching space has become almost it's almost comical to watch the mistakes that are made in the process of hiring a head coach by billionaire owners, and the fact that we're averaging about 6 to 7 every single year in the NFL, that's insane. You look at college football now, they're talking about kids transferring and why, there's no loyalty in college football. There's no loyalty with coaches either. You got guys leaving programs that are going to bowl games to take jobs for more money.
Mhm.
Um, College coaches getting fired every single year. Winning coaches are getting fired. In the NFL, you look at certain situations where you got guys that are, 500 is not good enough, but they're replaced by guys that have like a 20% winning percentage over 2 years over the same. It makes no sense to me. And I think that everybody's trying to find the next Sean McVay, the next, Mike Tomlin, if you will. And I think that you have to find the next best coach for your team. And the processes are flawed. I understand there are search firms and there are advisory firms that come in, but at the end of the day, you have to interview people who are leaders. Leaders of 53 players on a roster. And the mistake that's being made in the NFL is they're hiring leaders of quarterback, leaders of offense, and they're not hiring leaders of men. And you see that with a lot of teams where you have head coach, but he's more offensive coordinator, head coach, and then you have head coach defense, and they don't go into the other side. I know of many instances where I have a defensive coordinator on a staff with an offensive head coach, where the offensive head coach never comes into the defensive side of the building, doesn't address the team, not interested, is strictly locked in on the offense, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work.
That is so interesting, and it's crazy that's happening at the highest level of football. That's the craziest thing to me. Now, I would ask to follow up on this. In your opinion, who should be like the biggest, I guess, the greatest voice in hiring a coach? Is it the owner, the general manager, the players, the football operations staff? Like, I mean, I'm talking just like, who should it be? Do you think that the owners, who should be the greatest voice when it comes to all of this, to make sure they're doing that and finding the leaders of men that you're speaking about?
I think the problem is also, I think it's the owners first and foremost, because it's their team,
Sure.
and the buck stops there. But I think that a lot of these guys don't have time to do the due diligence they need to do to see the candidates they need to see. When Tomlin was young and he was in Minnesota as a defensive coordinator for 1 year, the Rooney Rule kicked in, and was just starting, and Dan and Art Rooney had him interviewed. John Wooten from the Fritz Pollard Alliance had called them and said, "Can you get him in here?" And the fan base was locked in on two candidates at that point, and Mike was a who's Mike Tomlin type situation in a lot of cities. But when they interviewed him, they couldn't believe how good he was, and they were like,
Wow.
"Wow, this guy's got the it factor." And when I say the it factor, there's a lot of guys that have the it factor. I mean, but you have to meet them, right? There's so many guys running around in the NFL that are really talented young coaches, but unless they get introduced and unless they build their networks, they're probably not going to get seen. You have to get them on lists. And they interviewed Mike, and he blew them away. They had no intention at before the interview of hiring him, and he blew them away. The Dolphins also interviewed him that same cycle, and it's just more of the check the box in the Rooney Rule interview there. But people at the interview said he blew their doors off, and yet they hired, I think his name was Cam Cameron, who was fired that first year, winning like 3 games or something. So you never know, and that's why I'm saying, just sometimes take the time to make the right decision. Do your due diligence, ask around. Shoot, if I if I had my time and I was retired, I'd go around scouting coaches for teams and putting scouting reports in front of them. Going, these are the guys I like, these are the young coaches. And typically what you're seeing on staff, so is guys are hiring their friends, guys they work with.
Sure.
So they're not necessarily hiring the best staff for themselves either. They're hiring the easiest staff to hire. So the trickle
Interesting.
down is bad.
Oh yeah, and it's a compound effect essentially from there because, like you said, it's a trickle down. That's crazy. No, that's super good insight. Now, Brian, if you look at your career with all the people you've, whether it's the coaches or the players that you've represented, is there a particular individual or a memory that you have? Like, I'm sure there's been some tough conversations you've had with clients. Maybe you've lost clients because of honest conversations. Maybe you've had some amazing conversations and some huge achievements. Is there anything that sticks out as like one of your favorite memories, or if you have one or two of them, you'd be willing to share?
That's difficult because I have so many guys that I've had so
Sure.
much fun with and I've shared so many things with. I mean, my first client from 1990, I think for me, sustaining the relationship for, you know, 36 years now, still him calling him family. My daughter passed away. He was very close with my daughter. He was in the hospital with her in North Carolina when she was, struggling after a double lung transplant. Um, and just having that relationship be one of the most important relationships in my life. I was there a couple years ago when his number was retired by Alabama State, and I was at the ceremony, and the, the sense of pride I felt for him. This is the shoe store introduction guy, and this now I'm sitting here watching him get inducted into the Alabama State Hall of Fame, and then I'm sitting at a Middle Tennessee State game with him because I have the head coach there, and his nephew plays on Middle Tennessee State. Last 2 years ago, we were at the game. It's just sustaining the relationships long term. I think that one of the best moments I've had is we had a coaching conference a few years ago and Tomlin spoke, and he never speaks at any of these things. And ours is well attended. The NFL sends people, and you know, he he got up there and spent the first 7 minutes talking about my relationship with him
Oh
and how
wow.
he met me and what that was like for him. And it was just something. My son came over to me right after and said, "That's the most proud of me he's ever been." He was very emotional about it. So those are things when you hear from the clients that you have been with. Raheem Morris, I know him since he was at Hofstra University as a senior in college, and I've seen him grow and become a head coach twice and one of the most successful DCs in the NFL. Just knowing him and knowing his family, it's just those are the things that I care about right now. Um, I don't I don't deem success to be money. I don't deem success to be number of clients. I deem success to be, how you've affected other people and how they've affected you. What's the mutuality of the relationship? And I'm always clear with that. The one thing I value the most is loyalty. I can't do the bullshit. And if that's what people want, you got the wrong guy. And we walk away from so many people all the time, and people are gullible, people are vulnerable, and if you're weak minded, you're in the wrong business to begin with. But it's even worse when people are telling you something and you're believing it.
Oh
So but
yeah.
if you have that foundational relationship, it's strong. And unfortunately, the crazy part is I am still close with all of my clients from the 90s. All of them, we speak all the time. And the 2000s. It's the later guys. It's the social media generation, and it's the everybody's being indoctrinated to believe things that maybe they don't believe and have to believe because there's pressure. Generation. There's no loyalty as much. It doesn't exist like it used to. We used to roll up our sleeves and get dirty together. Now everything is like, well, what have you done for me lately? And I
Interesting.
love it. I represent one of my former players who played in the NFL, Gary Stills. His son Dante is a client, so it's his
Okay.
second generation, and he's a starting defensive lineman on the Arizona Cardinals. Going into his fourth year, and he's going to be a star in this league. He already is successful, but it's nice to be part of another generation.
Oh yeah.
And now we're seeing it in the NI in the high school space with some of our guys. So it's always a blessing.
Man, what? Well, that's cool. That's the still spell.
Yeah,
That's awesome. That's a random little pop that one out there. That's cool,
yeah.
dude. Yeah, you get to go to the second generation. What a cool experience. What a cool, journey you've been on thus far, and it's very intriguing, and it's actually not too surprising. You mentioned like people nowadays are, it's a little bit different the way they communicate, the way they build relationships, but you're still finding ways. I think at the end of this interview, as I've like kind of wrapped it around, I'm like, you have always been learning the new landscape of things. Not only in the way that the world's working in the NIL space and just how you have to do stuff there, but your relationships are different, and you're learning how to communicate in different relationships and build relationships with people from different generations. I think it's really cool. You have a very unique skill set, and obviously that is the case. That's why people are going to you. And I think it's so cool. I'm inspired by that. And that's all that information right there. I wish the whole world would take that, value loyalty, build these authentic relationships, get away from the BS. I wish people would listen to that, and like we could have more of that in the world. Now, Brian, if you look back as we wrap up the interview and we come to the time, like if you look back at your whole life, like what's the biggest life lesson that football has taught you thus far?
I don't take my life lessons from my work.
Okay.
A lot of what I've learned is through my family and through my daughter and the strength that she showed. That's something that, she taught me always. My grandmother told me one thing. She said, when you're at your worst, do something nice for someone else. My daughter always told me, when you're at your worst, you could still laugh. You can't ever lose the ability to laugh. Football to me, it's a competitive sport. It's wonderful, but it's not life. Just, that's not, hasn't provided any lessons for me in that sense.
I love that though, man. And those are great insights, as well. Just, I'm going to remember that too. I'm going to put those down. I'm writing these down on my whiteboard. So I appreciate you sharing those from the grandmother and from your daughter. So thank you for that. And Brian, I just want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for taking your time. I know I'm just a random guy from Idaho that you connected with, and I really do appreciate you taking the time and sharing your insights and wisdom here on my podcast platform. And I wish nothing but the best for you moving forward. I know it'll continue moving for years and years, man, as you continue to represent these coaches and these players as they go on. So I'm just really grateful for you taking the time to join me, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you seeking me out. That was great. Wonderful.
Yeah. Absolutely. For all those
All
who
right.
are listening, appreciate you. Make sure to tune in next week. We'll be coming to you with another interview. Take care.
Guys, thanks so much for listening to another episode of my show. Now, if you could go and do me a favor, head over to iTunes, give me 5 stars, and leave me a review. It would be greatly appreciated. Thanks, guys. Appreciate your support.